You know that guy everyone thinks is broken? The one who says no to gatherings. Not because he's scared, but because he's found something better. He doesn't broadcast his breakfast online, doesn't crave digital applause. His phone dies and he feels nothing. Society calls him strange. Here's what will demolish everything you believe. This man isn't just surviving. He's conquering existence in ways that would crush the average validation-hungry person. While everyone suffocates in noise, he's discovered what most spend entire lifetimes chasing. True dominion over himself. Let me show you what we've been programmed to accept as normal. Eyes open, immediately check what others are doing. Fill every silent moment with someone else's voice. Podcast while driving, chatter at work. Never sit in stillness, because quiet feels wrong. Always need plans, always need company. Always need others present to feel acceptable. Sound familiar? Now watch what happens when someone strips away all that interference. What occurs when they eliminate the desperate hunger for external approval? The endless babble. The frantic search for acceptance in crowds demanding conformity. They uncover something terrifying. They discover their authentic self. For most of us, that's more frightening than any nightmare. We've been so busy being who we think we should be. We've forgotten who we actually are beneath the performance. Not this individual. The man who embraces solitude made a different decision. A decision society desperately needs us to believe is wrong. He examined the world and declared this is nonsense. Not angrily, not depressively, but with crystal clarity that sliced through all pretense. Landing on one simple truth. We've been following someone else's blueprint. Obeying rules written by marketers. Influenced by people who don't give a damn about us. Pursuing dreams that aren't even ours. We're actors who forgot we were performing. Completely lost in a role that's slowly strangling our true nature. But what happens when someone refuses to play that game? Why do you think society pushes so hard for constant connection? Why does every movie, every song, every advertisement tell us that alone equals broken? Why is solitary treated like a curse word? Because they know something we're just beginning to understand. The man comfortable in his own presence can't be controlled. He can't be manipulated. He can't be sold insecurity wrapped in pretty packages. He doesn't need their products, their validation, or their permission to be content. He's achieved what most people spend their entire lives pursuing, inner tranquility. And he didn't get it from a guru, a self-help book, or a wellness retreat. He got it from the most radical act possible in our hyperconnected world. He sat alone with himself and refused to flee. Arthur Schopenhauer understood this long before Instagram existed. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. Consider that for a moment. When was the last time any of us were truly alone? Not just physically isolated while multitasking through life, but actually alone with our thoughts. No distractions, no mental pacifiers. Just us in the raw, unfiltered reality of our own minds. Terrified yet? Most of us are. That's why we stuff every moment with noise. We're petrified of what we might discover in the silence. But the man who loves solitude, he's not afraid of that quiet. He owns it. While everyone else fights for attention in a crowded room, screaming to be heard over chaos. He's sitting in his peaceful corner, building something extraordinary. He's not trying to fit in because he's too busy standing out, not through desperate attention-seeking, but through the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly who he is. Here's where things get really uncomfortable for the system we're all trapped in. This man doesn't need external approval. He doesn't need applause. He doesn't need others to understand him, validate him, or even acknowledge he exists. And that makes him dangerous. Not dangerous in a harmful way. Dangerous in a way that threatens everything society has taught us to believe about happiness and success. The system has convinced us that joy comes from external sources. Other people, possessions, achievements that others can see and applaud. It's created an entire economy based on our insecurity, our need to belong, our fear of being alone. But what happens when someone breaks free from that system? What happens when someone discovers that true contentment doesn't come from the crowd? It comes from within. They become untouchable. Want to know why the system fears him? Because he's not a good consumer. He doesn't buy things to fill emotional voids. He doesn't need retail therapy, status symbols, or experiences designed to impress others. He's not scrolling endlessly through content designed to keep him distracted and dissatisfied. He's not addicted to the dopamine hits that keep most people's attention fractured and their wallets empty. He's economically dangerous because he's psychologically free, while most of us are renting our peace from other people, borrowing our self-worth from approval and recognition, leasing our happiness from relationships that might disappear tomorrow. This man owns his peace. Marcus Aurelius figured this out nearly 2,000 years ago. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. Think about the people we all know who seem to always be in some kind of drama. Their mood depends on who calls them back, who includes them in plans, who validates their decisions. They're like emotional ping-pong balls bouncing between highs and lows based on how other people treat them. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine someone whose mood, whose sense of self-worth, whose entire emotional state is completely independent of external circumstances. Someone who's genuinely happy, whether they're at a party or sitting alone in their room. That's terrifying to the system because it reveals something we've all been taught to avoid, that we've been living as emotional slaves, completely dependent on others for our basic psychological needs. Here's what he's really doing in all that solitude. While others are busy consuming drama, consuming other people's opinions, he's creating. He's reading books that expand his mind instead of mindlessly consuming drama that shrinks it. He's developing skills instead of developing addictions to instant gratification. He's having deep conversations with himself instead of shallow conversations with people who don't really know him. But here's the part that'll really mess with your head. He's not doing any of this to prove a point. He's not trying to be different or special or superior. He's doing it because it feels right to him. Because when someone strips away all the noise, all the expectations, all the nonsense, this is what emerges. This is who he actually is. The man who loves being alone has figured out the biggest secret in human psychology. You don't need anyone else's permission to be happy. You don't need their approval to live your life. You don't need their understanding to make choices that feel right to you. You don't need their validation to know your worth. And once you truly understand that, everything changes. Not because your external circumstances necessarily change, but because your relationship with those circumstances transforms completely. You stop being a victim of your environment and become the architect of your experience. The man who loves being alone isn't just thriving, he's free. And once you taste that freedom, once you experience that peace, once you feel that power, you realize that everything you've been taught about happiness, success, and fulfillment has been backwards. The answer isn't out there. It's in here. And the journey to find it begins the moment you stop running from yourself and start running toward who you're meant to be. If this opened your eyes to something you've been feeling, but couldn't put into words, you know what to do. The man who loves being alone isn't just surviving. He's showing us all what it means to be truly alive. And that might be exactly what the world needs right now.